Welcome back to the channel, everyone. For the majority of this video, I'm going to be going to a place, some recent boots on the ground that I visited, and the main question and reasoning why I went there is the difficulty of getting there and basically the narrative, as usual, doesn't make any sense. I'll get into some of that, a couple paragraphs or so. That the only thing they give us, no renditions of it, of course, in 1907. But before I get into that, I want to get into this picture that relates to basically everything. I think this picture is from Slovakia, 1890. And there's many pictures and comparisons of old castles or just anywhere around the world that shows that the vegetation is pretty much non-existent not that long ago. If the year is correct here in 1890, you can see there's just a few bushes here and some trees just barely visible here. We all know that stuff is kind of manipulated and stuff in old pictures, but 135 years. And now we have this, which looks pretty accurate to me as far as the size and the vegetation of stuff growing in roughly about 135 years. The bigger question is, why was it like this 135 years ago? Isn't this supposed to be really old? From a very long time ago. Just cancel out the castle up here and the obvious man-made structures within the so-called mountain, but it looks like the event or resets or anything that you're thinking that happened multiple times or just one time doesn't really matter. Why is a top picture 135 years ago and the bottom picture is recent? Where's all the vegetation before that? This kind of comparison should open the eyes to everyone on every subject. This really doesn't make any sense, but it gives us a clue into something happened really recently because the vegetation doesn't make sense. I'm going to get in briefly to the narrative that they supply us with at Collier Creek Falls area. It's the site of a mill early 1900s, evidenced by two large stone columns that still stand today. It says the mill was likely a grist mill used for grinding grain, and we're going to get into that a little bit with some pictures, some renditions, or actually some actual pictures of what they call the grist mills and grinding of the grain. But they are two large stone columns approximately 20 feet high, remain at the site. The columns date to the early 1900s, with some sources suggesting they were built around 1907. And I always like seeing renditions or just something when old picture. 1907 isn't that long ago. But limited photographic evidence of the old water mill at Collier Creek Falls is available. Well, it should say no photographic evidence because there is none. Here's some random pictures of grist mills, and you can see the water mill over here, very tightly connected to this structure. Little suspect archway down here on the bottom. To give you an idea here, there's a rendition of grist mill and grinding grain, the machinery inside of the rendition here. Again, how close the water wheel is to the structure, both sides. And keep in mind, this was supposed to be going on where I ended up and saw the two stone columns, and I really want to present where they are, how I got there, and video really kind of taking you there. And if you can imagine this construction and why this was happening in 1907 in the middle of nowhere, where did the grain come from and where is everything at that's not there anymore. Here we are at the falls here, and you can see it's Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia on either side here, but this is where the actual trail was. Keep in mind, okay, here's the road coming into. It's about 1.5 miles. It's a dirt road, one lane, potholes everywhere. You have to put in the actual GPS coordinates as far as longitude and latitude to Shangri-La Falls here. And then once you park and there's no signs or anything. So you go down this trail and you cut over on the ledge. You can't see here, but you will soon see in a minute. And then you get to those first falls. Well, after you get to those first falls, which is here, this creek flows into these first falls, which is a pretty good trail because it's kind of popular with people during the spring and the summer, and they come check this out and swim a little bit. But from here, you have to go through the creek all the way to here, which there is no signs or trailheads or whatever. You just go through the creek, which is basically anywhere from 30 to 50 foot tall on each side of you, cliff faces. So the main point of me doing this and wanting to even go to see these two columns is, how do you get there? How is this possible? Why is this really possible? Why were you putting some supposed grist mill in absolutely the middle of nowhere? BFE. Cliff faces all around, and they're supposedly grinding grain. And the only thing that exists is two columns and two small pieces of old iron machinery. All right, so we're going to go through a few images that I took on the way there, and here's kind of towards the beginning, and you have to go down this ledge here. And you could leave in the comments of if you think I'm off my rocker a little bit on this site, but I don't think so. Just the fact that the way you have to get there, and there's nothing else around anywhere, and you have these two columns. The water level was really low. It's been a drought for about 3 months. So this is normally covered in water here, so you would have to walk through all that. But just to the right here is the first waterfall, Shangri-La Falls to the right here, and here's where the creek empties out into it, and this is the only way to those two columns. In my opinion, everything you see in here to the left and to the right and on ground, it was all heat damaged and destroyed, and you have bits and pieces of survival every now and then, noticeable either brick structure, stone structure, man-made stuff. And let's go over a few points of what I see and maybe what you see. You can leave in the comments, but number one, they say that this was the structure for the water wheel, and these aren't even close together for one. And another thing is, if this waterfall was not here, say these were in the middle of the woods or not by a waterside or even in the city or something, they could say, "Oh, it was a cathedral back in 1800. It caught on fire," or it was a post office, or it was a home that burnt down in 1810 or 1892, or take your pick. They could say anything they want about this. You have these everywhere. You could kind of see what you would say tool markings or bore holes, but this one's even kind of covered up. Now, this is very hard rock right here. So you have to imagine them in 1907 or whatever they were able to say as far as these rectangles and squares are all over the place at the site. There's nothing in it. It's just vacant, and it doesn't make any sense as far as, especially where it's at. They're giving you a narrative with one little piece of here of machinery and some more metal here, and that's the only thing that exists at this place. Here's this piece here, kind of close up. Not sure exactly what that would be. Don't know. But it is very interesting, especially that this is the only thing that is still left. Now, if this was a grist mill grinding grain in this location, which is totally insane to me, but what do I know? Where's the rest of the structure? Where did it go? There's nothing here but these stone columns and these two pieces of metal. So where's the rest of it? And it's not that long ago, supposedly. It's 118 years or something. Where did the whole building go? Because this had to be, if you're grinding grain, like they say, or even just a grist mill, there should be many other columns or structures or even, say, wood attached to it. And that's another thing. You don't see anything attached or say was attached to these blocks and stones. I just don't. I didn't see anything or any evidence of that. So where I'm coming from, and the reason again that I wanted to go here is just take a look with your own eyes. Why would they do this here? It makes no sense. We're just given stories, looking up on Google or wherever, say even in books or history books on certain things, and there's just a few words that describe what it is, but he just pass it off as a grist mill. You don't really even give any thought into it when you're there, or most people wouldn't. But for me, what I see here is everything around. Just take out these columns. All this around look different. Add these back in here. I think this is all from the same time period. I could be wrong, at least on these columns, but it's the location of this place is so insane to do this and then put a narrative out there that there was a grist mill here and there's nothing else for miles, and it's really pretty difficult, especially back in 1900, to get here. So a cataclysm happened. It changed all of this buildings, and it happened to leave these two columns and a couple pieces of machinery. Could have been something else there that people have taken over the time, but not many people go here actually. And here's these blocks are everywhere, and you have those tool markings there, supposedly, or possibly, not supposedly, but I found stuff like this also where it was brick structure and kind of changed to rock, and then it left these impressions, but it could be either or. And just imagine stacking up these stones in 1900, about 20 feet tall, and not saying that's impossible or anything, but location, 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 it just doesn't make any sense. And where's everything at? Where did it go? There's nothing here but this. I'm also going to play a few short clips of some unedited video that I've took here. Just maybe 2 or 3 short clips. Just so you can see the area where I'm walking at and everything. And I'll probably get into one more thing right after that. Few of these over here, one there, there. also one. Can't really see it in the rippling. Another one of those. How and why is this here? There's not even a paragraph really on this. Literally out in the middle of nowhere. Where did these blocks come from? Where? So if this was an actual mill in 1900, all you have left are these two 20-foot columns and a few pieces of that right there. That's it. Where did everything else go? All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Just with a few of these shots, some shares from Chaput. I think this is in the Czech Republic. But don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's where it's at. Just a blob of melted mess. And I really wanted to show these few pictures just because of the whole melted step thing. And like I said before, they usually only show you the one in Egypt in one of the pyramids and talking about, oh, it's the sun coming through or people walking on it. But this is certainly not, well, maybe the sun had something to do with it. I have no idea. But this is not erosion. This is nothing else but melted structure. And it flowed all the way through here. And also, all this, of course, was heat affected. You can see the lines here, and all this whole thing was structure. And you really wouldn't be able to tell that except for these obvious, which looks like stairs. Also, back to the erosion thing, and this is on the top of wherever it's sitting, on top of a hill. I mean, just the rain and whatever is not going to do this right here, right in the middle. It's pretty obvious. I don't know what else you could think this was, but you could see these were straight across at one time. Looks like every one of them connected. And then once you get down here, it just goes really blobbiness. And looks like the flow came from the middle of the structure somewhere. The really after effects of the heat flowed through the middle of these steps, or caving in from under itself from the heat. One of the two, seems like. Then I've also seen firsthand this kind of stuff here. All of this, really, minus those steps we were just looking at. But and they'll call this millions and millions of years old. But here, especially, you know that it was some kind of a structure and not millions of years old. I really just wanted to show these pictures. Great shots. So thank you again, Chaput, for these. And you can see here the connected steps that did go straight across here. So what does that make this here? Also structure. Here's your lines, structure lines everywhere. All this is melted down. Some a little bit more than others. But this whole entire thing was an obvious structure. Every bit of it. And also what's all around it. It was all one structure, not rock, not geology. Appreciate everybody being here. Peace within, guys. See ya.